This question comes from Jordan, who asks, what if Saturn's rings disappeared overnight? At first glance, you might think, cool, no more rings. But Saturn's rings are not just decoration. They play a subtle role in the dynamics of the planet, its moons, and even our understanding of planetary science. Let's start with what the rings actually are. Saturn's rings are mostly water ice, with a bit of dust and rock, ranging in size from tiny grains to massive boulders. They extend up to 282,000 kilometers from the planet, yet are incredibly thin, often only about 10 meters thick. So visually stunning, but physically delicate.
If they vanished overnight, the first effect would be purely aesthetic. From Earth, Saturn would look more like Jupiter, majestic, striped, but without the iconic ring halo. Astronomers and casual stargazers alike would mourn the loss of one of the most recognizable sights in the solar system.
But beyond aesthetics, there's a gravitational story. The rings, though not massive compared to Saturn, still weigh about 30 quadrillion kilograms.
That's a fraction of the mass of the Moon, but enough to subtly influence the orbits of nearby moons. Some smaller moons are actually shepherd moons, keeping ring particles confined. Without the rings, these moons might slowly drift, and new orbital resonances could emerge. Saturn's magnetic field interacts with the rings as well. The charged particles from the rings create a faint plasma environment around the planet.
Without the rings, some of this plasma would vanish, possibly affecting the auroras at Saturn's poles. It's a cosmic chain reaction. Removing one element alters the environment in ways we might not immediately see. How did the rings form in the first place? Most theories suggest a shattered moon or a captured comet broke apart billions of years ago. Some scientists even think the rings are relatively young, only a few 100 million years old, and might disappear naturally over time as particles fall into Saturn or escape the system. So, in a sense, a sudden disappearance is just an extreme acceleration of a natural process. Speaking of natural processes, let's talk about debris. If the rings disappeared instantly, where would all that ice go?
Some would likely fall onto Saturn, creating spectacular but deadly rain. Some fragments might be ejected outward, possibly hitting moons or even floating into interplanetary space. Small moons like Mimas or Enceladus could experience impacts, temporarily altering their surfaces.
Saturn's atmosphere would also feel the difference. Ring material slowly rains down on the planet at a rate of hundreds of tons per second. Without it, the upper layers would see a subtle change in chemical composition and potentially temperature dynamics. Auroras might dim slightly. Clouds at high altitudes could shift. For Earth, the disappearance is mostly symbolic. We wouldn't notice a gravitational change, and the planet's orbit wouldn't budge.
But Saturn is a benchmark for planetary formation theories. Losing the rings would erase a natural laboratory for studying disk dynamics, processes that help us understand everything from protoplanetary disks to galaxy formation. The visual loss would be immediate in images from telescopes and spacecraft. Cassini, which spent over a decade orbiting Saturn, gave us unmatched views. Future missions would have one less feature to study, and any long-term observations of ring evolution would be impossible. Imagine training a telescope on Saturn for decades and seeing nothing where the rings used to sparkle.
There's also a poetic side. Saturn's rings have inspired art, mythology, and science fiction for centuries.
A world without them would lose one of its most iconic cosmic symbols. Kids learning astronomy would stare at a plain gas giant and wonder what happened to the halo.
Could the rings reform? Possibly over millions of years as gravitational interactions create new debris disks for moons or comets. But an overnight disappearance would be catastrophic on a human timescale. irreversible for anyone alive to witness it.
And let's not forget the moons. Some, like Pan and Atlas, sculpted the edges of rings with their gravity.
Without rings, they might start interacting differently with the rest of Saturn's system. Even minor orbital nudges could, over thousands of years, lead to collisions or ejections from the system. One wild thought: if the ice rings vanished and became a debris field elsewhere in the solar system, it could seed impacts on other planets or moons. Saturn's rings are a reservoir of water ice. Suddenly scattering that ice could have subtle effects on moons like Titan or distant icy worlds in the Kuiper Belt.
For scientists, a sudden disappearance would be a mystery of epic proportions. We'd scramble to figure out whether it was a collision, a cosmic ray anomaly, or an artificial intervention. The data would flood every space agency and observatory, a planetary-scale detective story.
From an engineering perspective, no human technology could make the rings vanish in a single night. It's far beyond rockets, lasers, or megastructures. Even a civilization several times more advanced than ours would struggle to disassemble hundreds of thousands of kilometers of icy debris. So the overnight scenario is firmly in the realm of what if, a thought experiment. But imagining the rings gone helps us appreciate their delicate balance. Saturn's system is a complex dance of ice, rock, and gravity. Remove one element, and the choreography subtly changes. Moons shift, auroras flicker, and scientists everywhere stare at their data in confusion. So what if Saturn's rings disappeared overnight?
Aesthetic loss, altered moon orbits, small atmospheric changes, disruption in the plasma environment, and a huge gap in our understanding of planetary rings. Plus, a giant cosmic mystery that would puzzle astronomers for generations.
In the end, Saturn would still be magnificent, its stripes still beautiful, its moons still orbiting. But the iconic halo that made it a symbol of the solar system's wonder would be gone.
The universe wouldn't collapse, we wouldn't feel it on Earth, but the ring's disappearance would echo across science, imagination, and the night sky forever.